I read some more horror novels. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, if you guys haven't watched it already, I actually recently uploaded a video where it was talking about a romance reader trying the horror genre. And that was actually for Summerween, which was a readathon hosted by Olivia Reads a Latte and also Gabby Reads on YouTube. That video was very fun to film and to create because I was reading a new to me genre. But as I was filming that video, I realized that the books that we're talking about weren't specifically horror genre, and that was more focused on the thriller genre. And because the horror genre is very new to me, I actually didn't know what really classified as a horror book. So I did some research and I found more horror books to read. And I actually ended up reading, I think, around 5, and I'm going to include a thriller that I recently finished today because I just want to wrap it up. But a lot of people actually also commented on that video and told me a lot of recommendations and a lot of suggestions. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to get around to the recommendations there yet, but I'll definitely be adding it to my TBR and keeping my eye out on it so that I could read that book later. So for the first book that I read for this video is actually called The Apartment by S.L. Gray. And this book is classified in the horror genre according to my library. So this book follows a couple who seemingly lives a perfect life until one day their house is broken into by people wearing masks, and they have guns pointing at them and they are asking things like, where's the safe? Like, where's the money? And questions like that. They are completely terrorized to the point that the husband doesn't say anything, doesn't move, and doesn't do anything to talk down the intruders or to help protect his wife, who was taken away and kind of brought to a different room. And she is petrified and she is scared that she is going to be killed or sexually assaulted or both. Thankfully, nothing of that happens. So if you guys are looking for a trigger warning, no sexual assault does happen. But needless to say, they are terrorized by that incident and that they're trying to live a normal life afterwards, but they can clearly feel the mental impact of that incident. So they decide to actually go on vacation and to go to Paris and book an apartment. And this is the reason why it's called The Apartment, because when they first arrive, they realize things are a little bit off. It's not as nice as the homeowners said it was, because this is actually kind of like a home swap situation where a couple is living in this apartment and they want to try out to live in America, so they switch apartments. So if you ever watched the holiday Christmas movie, The Holiday, then you'll kind of know what the sense I'm talking about. They realize that the house is different than the pictures. They realize that there are things in the house that shouldn't belong there, like a whole bunch of human hair, and it's just creepy, and it's set in that weird setting. And also, to top it off, this couple actually doesn't have any resources and doesn't have any money because of a mix-up with the bank, and they are left to defend for themselves with cash only. And they also lose their luggage, so they don't have many of the essentials that they do have. So it does set a very ominous tone, and there are a lot of secrets in the apartment, as well as told by the neighbors, who basically told them that they shouldn't be there and that they shouldn't enter this apartment. Meanwhile, the French couple who has moved to America so that they can live in the main couple's apartment are nowhere to be seen. They cannot be contacted, and they contact and respond very late. So it's very ominous. But this book isn't that great, and I didn't really like it because it only took place in the apartment for a few chapters, and then they were back to America. And with our husband and our wife actually becoming more suspicious of each other and thinking that they are not who they are, and that they are creatures, and that they are monsters and demons, and they're just pretending to be each other's spouse. And this is the book kind of where you try to figure out like who is actually a demon and who is actually who they say they are. It was creepy and ominous at times, but it definitely wasn't my favorite because it kind of dragged a lot towards the middle and end. There wasn't really anything exciting happening, and the fact that this book is called The Apartment but only takes place in the apartment for like a couple of chapters just doesn't make sense to me. And I guess horror is just not really my genre because there's a lot of fantastical elements happening in it, so it was kind of stretching my beliefs, and I just thought the ending was kind of lame. So unfortunately for this book, I actually gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. So the next horror book that I read was The Grip of It by Jack Gmek, and now this book is very creepy and very thrilling. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually really enjoyed it. So this book is about a newlywed couple, and they decide to buy a house in this small town, and this house was sold for very cheap, and they were very shocked that it was on the market because it's really nice and it looks really nice. But mysterious things happen as soon as they move in. The real estate agent who sold them this house disappears, and they can no longer contact them. Papers and registrations for buying this house and the ads for this house are gone and no longer to be found. Our main female character, the wife, actually suffers lots of bruises on her bodies and notices that the bruises are growing every day and actually growing as they look at it. And it's really strange and really weird. And our main male character suffers a lot of things happening to him as well. So you can already see that there is something in the house that is causing a lot of pain and damage to this couple, and there is like a reason for it where the house is kind of pushing them away, and you're trying to figure out what it is, and they're trying not to freak themselves out because they think that it's not anything supernatural, but of course there is something. And this book also talks about the backstories of this couple and how maybe why the house is punishing them. And it was very interesting and very thrilling and very creepy a lot of times, and I definitely recommend you to check this one out, although some people on Goodreads think otherwise. So the next book that I read is actually a novella, and this book is called The Prank by Ashley Ray Harris. And now this book follows a main character who is not that popular, but she is surprised when the popular kids actually invite her along on a series of practical pranks. And they are doing things, but each practical prank has something that goes terribly wrong, and one of the popular members actually suffers a lot from it. So this book was very spooky and creepy in a way, and it was done very well, especially because it was fairly short, and I really enjoyed it because they did not shy away from kind of like a bad accident like normal people do for like young adult books. So this one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and I recommend you to read it if you're bored or if you want something spooky for October. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually a thriller, but it's kind of a horror genre book, and it's called When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. And now this book, I think it's fairly controversial on Twitter, where a lot of people are upset that some people don't like it and some people are not liking it as much as others. And you know, I just think that's kind of silly because a book is meant to be brought to many opinions, and it's their individual ratings and their individual reasons why this book is not good. For this book, I actually gave a 1 out of 5 stars, so I'm actually the few people who didn't end up liking this book. And the reason why I didn't like this book is because it's deemed as a thriller. On the cover, it actually says it's a thriller, but I felt no thrilling aspects of it. So Alyssa Cole did an amazing job at researching and talking about like gentrification, and also talking about how the racism and economic issues happening in these neighborhoods, and how people are being pushed out of their houses with high rent, and how they are being discriminated for their economic wealth status. But as a book, it did not thrill me. There were no events where I thought anything suspicious was happening. It read more like a contemporary novel where bad things were happening to good people. There wasn't any moments where I was sitting on the edge of my seat wondering who is plotting against people and who is harming these people that have gone missing in their houses or that have moved away out of their houses. It didn't make my heart race. So for those reasons, I don't think it can be deemed as a thriller. And then when we got to the end, it was very hard to believe, and it's very hard to imagine because it kind of came out of left field. Things were just being said to act as solutions to the main problem and to make readers believe that these are reasonable conclusions to the story, which I didn't think it was reasonable. It just didn't seem natural. There was no lead into it. It almost felt like that this book was actually built into two genres, where the first part of it was trying to be a thriller, but then the second part of it was actually trying to be a horror novel. So if you guys don't already know what this book is about, it's basically about how this one seemingly normal neighborhood is being changed overnight. Neighbors are moving out of their houses and moving into different houses out of the neighborhood, and there are residents in the neighborhood who don't believe that they voluntarily moved, and now they have lost contact with these people. So unfortunately for me, I did not like this book, and I ended up giving it a 1 out of 5 stars because it wasn't a thriller. But if I were to rate it as like a normal fictional story, cutting out of the ending, which turned out to be a horror part, then I would definitely give this book a 4 out of 5 stars for educating me on the issues that are happening in neighborhoods and in countries such as America. So for the next book, it's actually not a horror novel, but it's a thriller novel called The End of Her by Shari Lapena. This is Shari Lapena's most recent release that came out in 2020, and I am a fan of Shari Lapena after reading The Couple Next Door this year. I really like that domestic thriller, and Shari Lapena does a great job at domestic thrillers, so this one is something like that as well. It's about a couple that tried really hard to have a family, and when they do have a family, the family kind of falls apart because the husband is actually cheating on the wife with our female character who is kind of tied up in everybody's stories. There's this one character who is the her, who always likes to butt into people's relationships, seduce the male, and then kind of use them for blackmail so that she can get money and that she doesn't have to work a normal job, because she threatens them and says that I'll expose all your secrets to your wife and ruin your whole family if you don't give me money to keep my mouth shut. And that's kind of her plan, and that's kind of her career since her early 20s, because she's a fairly attractive woman. So now this is kind of like the story of how she destroys these couples' lives and how some people get injured from it, and some people are being caught up in crimes that were committed in the past. And this is the story of kind of 3 couples and how their plot lines intertwine with this one female character's plot line. And I found this one so interesting. I think it was very well done with how these character dynamics were and how these characterizations were. None of the voices seemed like that they were similar to each other, and all the characters had their own motivations, and I really enjoyed this one, so I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I want to talk about in this video is actually another thriller, and it's also by Shari Lapena. So finishing this book, I have officially finished all Shari Lapena's thriller novels, which is an accomplishment for me since I normally typically don't read thriller novels, but since I read so many now, I think I should just call myself a thriller reader, even though I don't purchase thriller books and I just listen to them through audiobooks from my library. But I'm gonna call myself that anyways. But this book is called Someone We Know, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars too as well. Similar to all her domestic thrillers, it's about couples plot lines intertwining and how everybody's character motivations are different, and they are just trying to get away from the police and not to be sentenced to a crime that they didn't commit. So this book, it starts off very thrillingly. It starts off with a murder, and a very gruesome murder. It's told from a perspective where you don't know who the murderer is, but you know that the girl is dead because she is basically hit with a hammer, and her body is found in a lake. And then now the investigators trying to solve the mystery behind her murder. There are 3 couples involved, once again, if I counted correctly, and these 3 men are accused of murder because they've had sexual intercourse with this one female character, and they all have maybe their own motivations of killing, maybe because she was demanding a lot, maybe because the secrets were going to spill out and ruin their individual families. The husband is accused of murdering because the husband knew of her affairs with other men. One of the other characters were accused because he was having an affair too, and he didn't want his wife to know. And then the other one was the same too as well, but their individual family issues also came out to play. One of the couples had a son who likes to break and enter into people's houses to hack into their computers, and then another couple is trying to hide something away from the police as well. So I really liked how Shari Lapena kind of tied these 3 couples together, and how she brought on different motivations to why they might want to kill this girl, and how the ending kind of came out as something that you have never seen before, or you never would have thought of, and the motivations actually made sense as to why they would actually kill this girl. So I really liked it, and I'm glad that I picked up Shari Lapena's books for this video. But anyways, that is it for all the horror/thriller novels that I have read in the past month of September. I had a great time discovering new horror reads. Once again, if you guys do have recommendation for this genre, definitely leave it in the comments down below, and I'll add it to my TBR. Keep an eye out on it. I tend to read my horror novels and thriller novels through audiobook at my library, so unfortunately if it's not available at my library, I don't think that I'm going to get to it anytime soon, but who knows, maybe I'll read it in ebook format. But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.